Hey guys, it's John here on the JRB Tree Climbing channel. Recently, I published a video on no slack one-stick climbing, and that really generated a lot of conversation, a lot of thought. And as intended, I was kind of showing you that the stick isn't even really necessary. Remember the goal. The goal is to climb a tree quickly, efficiently, and safely. And by that, I've got three primary rules. One of them is that you're always tied to the tree on little slack, and that you've got a line to ground. And that simply isn't possible. When you see folks one-stick climbing and they put their stick on the tree, as high as they can reach, and they just start climbing. Well, we're not tied to the tree. An alignment's belt is inadequate. It's inadequate, right? We've seen the bloody posts. This thing's metal. If something goes wrong, we're falling into it. We've got to be tied to the tree and on little slack. So I don't have an objection to you using a climbing stick as long as you do so safely. Now, for me, I find it more difficult to climb with a climbing stick than without one. But hey, that's up to you. This is a video about one-stick climbing. I'm going to show you how I do it with a double-sided JRB Cinch system. Now, I recently did a whole bunch of content on the JRB Cinch. The JRB Cinch is an anchor that's easily moved and removed. And I'm going to put it on the tree. And I'm going to advance it up the tree using my Maverick Pole. Got a dedicated page, dedicated playlist for hitch climbing and now for stick climbing. But in the prior video, we used the Maverick hitch to advance to go up the tree. Now I'm using the JRB Cinch. Why? Well, it's not my personal preference, but I'm comfortable tying the Maverick hitch. You might not be. And so for those who are, just averse to tying a life-sustaining knot, I got to respect that. The JRB Cinch is an option. I could leave that pole there, or I could bring it down. I'll bring it down. It just has a little bit higher likelihood of getting knocked off compared to the Maverick. So on the other end of my double-sided JRB Cinch system, as you'd expect, I've got another JRB Cinch. And I'm going to take that one and I'm going to put it in a handy location so I've got it for my next move. This is the Longhorn Agile in compact mode. I've got one on each side. It's my primary point of attachment to the rope. I'm going to put that on my extremely short bridge and I'm attached. Okay, let's get started. Now, you'll see folks who climb the tree and take out slack. And I find that to be really difficult because, especially with a big tree, there's nowhere to grab. I find it advantageous to make use of the JRB Garda Hitch foot loop. You won't make a smaller investment with more versatility than this device. I've got my JRB Garda Hitch foot loop in transformation mode, which just means I'm running it really short. And now I can climb and just use the aider as exactly that. It's just an aid. It's really not a life-sustaining component, right? It's just providing stability. You see how stable I am here? Okay, now I'm going to point out that I usually climb with redundancy, so don't let this confuse you. It's optional, but I've got a second bridge and I've got a second point of connection of my foot loop. And so again, if you're nervous about the use of knots or friction hitches, or if anything were to go wrong with this friction hitch, I'm now tied in two places. I've got two independent moving points of attachment to my rope. Am I rope climbing or am I stick climbing? Well, depends on your perspective, but my life is not dependent on non-life safety equipment. Like what? Like this cam cleat. That cam cleat's not made for life safety applications. Sure, somebody on the internet said, trust your equipment. You know what I trust? I trust equipment that was made for the job. I trust equipment that has a minimum braking strength. There's plenty of ways you can do something, but doing it safely with equipment designed for the job, that's what we're after. Okay. Now, in terms of advantages and disadvantages of using a stick, the only real advantage I can think of is that I have a little greater stability at this point when I want to put my next anchor on the tree. It is a little easier to do when you're standing on something, because you can take as much time as you want. It's just like you were on a hunt. I'm going to take the other JRB Cinch. Again, I didn't tie anything. I'm going to take my Maverick Pole. I'm going to advance it up the tree. Now, let me point out something about efficiency. This hitch here, see, I've got another foot. I've got a whole nother foot that I could have climbed. But I'm kind of forgiving, I'm giving that back for the comfort of being on my stick. Got another Longhorn Agile hitch, compact Longhorn Agile. I'm going to put it on my bridge. And now I've got to grab that stick, right? And this is not one of my favorite parts of stick climbing, bending down to get my stick. And so I've got this hooked up in a way that I can kind of pop it off. And now I think what I'm going to do is, because I've got a little bit more room here, I think I'm going to take advantage of that. The fact that I'm basically on a rope climbing system, I can go up a little higher. And I could set my stick now. But hey, that was pretty easy, right? That was pretty easy to do that. So why don't I just keep going? Why don't I skip putting the stick on? I didn't need it on the first move. I don't need it on the second move. It's just slowing me down. Now I've got, you see what I did? I stood up and I took slack out of my upper anchor. And so now I can remove my lower anchor. I take my garter hitch foot loop. I'm effectively executing what would be hitch climbing, but with the assistance of a stick. I put my garter hitch on this line, so there's no tension on the lower, and I can remove it. Is it hitch climbing? Is it rope climbing? Is it stick climbing? Well, the jury's out. The point is, it's zero slack. And this is one lesson I learned here is it's easy to catch your foot on the bottom of your Maverick pole and accidentally knock it off the tree. And so let's not do that. Wouldn't affect my safety, but I wouldn't be advancing any further, would I? Okay. Now let's grab that stick. Now let's put it on the tree. So my stick is tied at roughly 20 feet. Could have got a little bit more room if I wasn't encumbered by the stick. Let's grab our other rope, other side of the system. I'm letting a little bit of slack in, right, because I climbed as far as I could on the last cinch. Let's tie another one. And with some practice, you can do this move I'm going to do right now, which is I can walk right over my stick. With enough slack in here, I can walk right over my stick. So I designed this Maverick pole because most stick climbers who I've asked, most hunters, prefer their anchor to be somewhere between 5 and 6 feet above their footing. And you can see from the lines on the tree, this is at 20 and that's at 25. I'm now loading the upper anchor. I'm now unloading the lower anchor. I'm now moving my foot loop. Right, it's an alternating anchor method, stick optional. I'm not going to make another move. And so I'll lower this cinch to the ground. Okay. How long does it take? I don't know. Does it matter? What's a few extra minutes? If we want it to be optimally quick, if the tree allowed it, I'd be rope climbing to begin with. DSRT, right? That's the quickest way I know of to get up in a tree. But what I really like about this, never dependent on my footing. I'm never dependent on my stick. Okay, now what would I do with that climbing line that's hanging down to the ground? Well, I would bring it up and you can hook it on here. You can put a saddle hunter's hitch on the tree. There's a million different ways to stash your rope. The point is, I'm at a respectable hunting height and haven't had any slack. Let's turn this machine around and come on down. First thing I'm going to do is lengthen my bridge. I would have done that for some comfort just for my hunt. Question I get quite often is, John, what happens when you remove your garter hitch? Are you non-redundant? And yes, I am non-redundant temporarily. So I immediately put in my munter. Even if I'm not going to rappel for quite a ways, I still put in my munter so I'm rappel ready. I'll put in a super munter and then pop that out at time of rappel. Okay, let's get our retrieval cord. I put that in the carabiner that's part of the JRB Cinch. Lengthen my upper bridge bit and begin to rappel. Let's remove our stick. Trying to anticipate all your questions during my single rope rappel on the Munter friction hitch. Incidentally, that video was made right here on this tree. We come down nice and slowly. One of the questions I get is about, well, John, what if there are branches on the tree? Yes, you can navigate branches with both the cinch and the Maverick hitch. See my dedicated video on that topic. Can't navigate a million branches, but a reasonable number. Direct your attention up to the canopy and focus on the anchor, and my audience will know where I am by virtue of the angle of the orange line. So right now you can tell by the angle it's something like 45 degrees. I'm going to pull not very hard and that'll come away. Well, now that was amazingly easy. If that's really rough bark tree, that would have been a lot more difficult. You just don't know what you're going to get. I didn't have to pull on that very hard at all. It's got a two-stage release, and so again, I got videos on all of this stuff. I'm trying to give you all of the homework up front. All of the prerequisite knowledge is in earlier videos, and so that we can get on with the fun of climbing and refer back to that. So I don't want anybody to to take this lightly. We're coming up on our respective hunting seasons. I'm not asking people to just run out and take this lightly. This requires, like any climbing method, requires some care. But I wanted to show you the system. I've switched to the Rougarou because this Rougarou it releases much easier. That retrieval is a lot easier. It's much more bendable. And so I think, if you guys like this, we're going to talk to our friends at Ape Canyon Outfitters, and we'll make up a system for you. If you would like a kit to buy the system, you're going to ask me, John, why do I need 50 feet of rope? Well, watch the videos on worst case retrieval of the system. There are scenarios where there's enough branches up there and enough hazards that we would need to remove a cinch and bring the system down to where we can actually touch it. But I've got this down to pretty much a science now, and I'm looking forward to using it in hunting season and mixing up this system and the Maverick hitch. If you've got any questions for me, just let me know. One detail that I may have failed to mention is that the weight of this system that I'm holding in my hands and this pole, the total weight is 5 pounds even. That's a pretty small burden to carry when you think about the fact that your life is on the line. Okay, as always, unscripted, one take, and I hope that made sense. Thanks, guys. Stay safe.